Okay. The question that Elliot asked was, how can we possibly be talking about the intention of the katan regarding putting the produce on the roof if the produce doesn't belong to him, it belongs to someone else? So I wanted to say, well, maybe that person made the katan the shaliach, and that's not a good answer because ein shlichus bakatan, you can't make a katan into a shaliach. So I struggled to try to find an answer. Meforshim don't really grapple with it. To them, it was probably more pashut than to me. Own produce. So we have the idea. Generally, we say that if a katan finds something, that whatever the katan finds belongs to his father, so to speak. Could be his parents, but halachically more his father, because his father is responsible to provide for him. Just like whatever your wife finds theoretically belongs to you. That's why I said theoretically, because you are obligated to provide for your wife. So whatever she finds, her yad is really just an extension of your yad. So if she picks up a $10 bill on the street, that $10 bill technically belongs to you. However, we know that it is possible for a katan to acquire things. So a katan can be koneh, but not makneh. Where do we see this? Where do we see this issue? We see this issue regarding giving your lulav and esrog to a katan on the first day of Yom Tov. On the first day of Yom Tov, you need to own your lulav and esrog in order to be mekayim the mitzvah, because it says bayom harishon, right? Ulakachtem lachem bayom harishon. It should be lachem. It has to belong to you. Bayom harishon. The other days, you can be mekayim the mitzvah with somebody else's lulav and esrog. But on the first day of Sukkot, you can only be mekayim the mitzvah with the lulav and esrog that belongs to you. So not a problem. Natan has a lulav and esrog, and I don't have a lulav and esrog. So Natan can be makneh the lulav and esrog to me, and I can be koneh it. When I'm finished with the mitzvah, I'm makneh the lulav and esrog back to Natan. I don't know how I do that. Okay. Back to Natan.
I'm going to go with the saf, then we should go nusin.
Right, that's correct. And then he is koneh that lulav and esrog that I've given him. Okay? So that's what you do if it's a gadol, if it's an adult. But what happens if you want your child to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav and esrog? What happens? Right? So it's a little bit of an issue, because if you are makneh your lulav and esrog to your child, you say, here, take it, all right? It's yours now. Use it to fulfill the mitzvah. The question is, can he give it back to you? Now, why don't you just say, here, borrow it and use it to fulfill the mitzvah? Because on the first day of Yom Tov, you can't fulfill the mitzvah with a borrowed lulav and esrog. So you want your child to be able to fulfill the mitzvah the proper way, even though it's only midin chinuch. So you say, here, this lulav and esrog now belongs to you. But if you have not yet fulfilled your obligation of lulav and esrog, that can put you in a sticky situation. Because a child, a katan, can be koneh, but not makneh. Right? He can't give it back to you in a legally significant way. Okay? Why? It's interesting. Which do you think requires a higher sophistication, a higher level of da'at, if you will? To be koneh or to be makneh?
Returning.
I think just the other way around. I think children learn, at an early age, children learn to take. Children learn to acquire. It's much more difficult for a child to learn to give up something.
Well, that's what I mean, the child returning.
Oh, yes, that's correct. The child returning the object, the child being makneh, the object. It's easier for a child to conceptualize taking something. It's not as easy for a child to conceptualize giving something away to someone else. Okay, so a child can be koneh. So Elliot, I think the answer to the question is that we're talking about produce that a child was koneh. whatever the circumstances were, that child is kona, or the cheresh is kona, or the shota is kona. Right? A cheresh can be kona, and a shota can be kona. Okay, so that's really the groundwork that I think can answer your question. Okay, so let's just refer, rather than going back over everything, let's just refer to the sheet that I gave you. Doesn't appear that anyone is joining us live, so I'll send a copy of this out just so you have it. But the Gemara, the Gemara that we're in the middle of, this Gemara actually began on Chavches Amud Aleph at the Chav Zayin Amud Beis, right? Chav Zayin Amud Beis at the bottom, correct, right? It's hard. I have the wrong Gemara. Can I borrow your Gemara?
We're on Yud Gimel.
Right. I'm looking at the next shir. I'm looking at the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Why doesn't it there? Okay. So this Gemara that we're in the middle of doing right now is the Gemara that began on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. There on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, we have the statement that begins.
Yud Bet Amud Bet Amar Rab Chia, right? This is
right.
where he
Yud Bet,
asks.
Yud Bet. I'm sorry. Yud Bet Amud Bet, or Yud Beis Amud Beis Nosen. All right. At the bottom of the page, where the two dots are, where it says Amar Rabbi Chia Bar Abba. That's the beginning of our Gemara, Rabbi Chia Bar Abba. The reason that it has two branches to it is because we haven't gotten up to the left branch yet. We're still in the right branch. Okay. So let's just look at the sheet for a second. So remember, Rabbi Chia Bar Abba said, Rabbi Yochanan asked the question, Yesh machshava lakatan o ein machshava lakatan, which translates as, is a katan's machshava legally significant to? Referring to an actual stated intent. That's what, when we talk about machshava in this sugya, we're not talking about machshava in the normal sense of the word. We're not talking about a thought. We have no idea what his thinking was. The only way we would know what his machshava was is if he said it. So whenever we say machshava, we're talking about a stated machshava, stated intent. And according to this first interpretation of Rabbi Chia, what question does Rabbi Yochanan ask? Is a katan's stated machshava legally significant or not? So on that question, Rabbi Ami asked, why are you asking about machshava? Why aren't you asking about maaseh? And Rav Ami answers his own question by saying, you're not asking about maaseh because you already know that maaseh is significant. How do we know that maaseh is significant? That was the case of the nuts. Right? Remember where the katan wanted to play with the walnut shell or the pomegranate shell, right? He would hollow it out and then he would fill it with sand or something like that. So he transformed that object from a non-kli into a kli. What was it that transformed the object? His maaseh, right? The fact that he simply stated, I want this walnut shell to be a timer, a sand timer, would not have been sufficient. If he would have said, I want this pomegranate shell to be a sand timer, that would not have been significant. But the fact that he stated it, that's his machshava, and then he went ahead and did it, there was a maaseh. Rabbi Yochanan clearly believes that it is legally significant and these items are now kalim and these items can be mekabel tuma. Because once they're defined as kalim, they can be mekabel tuma. The implication of that case is, if all he did was state his machshava, what would we say about this walnut shell or this pomegranate shell? Garnished. Nothing. If all he did was state his machshava, he didn't do anything, he just stated his machshava, what would we say? We would say, very nice, but it's not a kli. Because the fact that all you did was state your machshava has no legal significance at all. Okay. So, from the case of the nuts, we learn two things. We learn, number one, that ma'aseh is significant. And we learn, number two, that machshava alone is not significant. So Rabbi Ami says, wait a second, why didn't you ask about ma'aseh? You didn't ask about ma'aseh because you already knew the answer. You knew the answer was that ma'aseh is significant. Well, if you knew the answer that ma'aseh is significant from that very same case that you know the answer that ma'aseh is significant, you also know that stated machshava alone is not significant. So why are you asking about machshava here? Because look, remember what is Rabbi Yochanan's question at the top of the right branch? Is a katan's machshava legally significant or not? Rabbi Ami says, why are you asking? You know the answer to that question already. So Rabbi Chia has to reinterpret what he thinks Rabbi Yochanan is asking, and he changes it, and he says, Rabbi Yochanan is not asking about just machshava. In other words, he's not asking about the regular case of stated machshava, because everybody agreed. Rabbi Yochanan knows already that stated machshava alone is not significant. What's he asking about?
He's asking the unstated machshava with the maaseh.
Right, unstated machshava corroborated by maaseh. And what was that case? That was the case of the ola. Remember, this katan, this katan takes the ola, goes to the northern part of the azara, which is where the ola is shechted. Now remember, an ola has to be shechted l'shem ola in order for the person bringing it to fulfill his obligation. I took a neder, and I said, I'm going to bring a carbon ola. That was my neder. And I bring the carbon ola, and I give it over to this little kohen, this kohen katan. All right? The kohen katan takes the ola, and he goes to the northern part of the azara to shecht it. So what is there? There's a ma'aseh, there's a clear ma'aseh. But we don't know what his kavanah was. In other words, maybe he went to the northern part of the ma'aseh because there wasn't enough room anywhere else. And it was empty there. And that's where he wanted to go shecht. Or maybe he went to the northern part of the azara because he knew it was really a carbon ola, and that carbon ola needed to be shechted there. We don't know what his kavanah was. We don't know what his unstated machshava was. Says Rabbi Chia's, this is Rabbi Chia's new interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan, interpretation number 2, so to speak. If you have an unstated machshava, but it is corroborated by a ma'aseh, is that sufficient or not? And what, right, is Rabbi Ami happy with that answer?
Also
no. Also no. Why not? He says that can't be what Rabbi Yochanan is asking either. Why? Because we know already the case of Rabbi Yochanan. We know already the case where there's an unstated machshava and a corroborating ma'aseh. We know what Rabbi Yochanan holds. That's the case of the hechsher l'tuma that we spoke about at the end of last week. So what was the case again at the end of last week? A katan takes, this is where Elliot asked this question, a katan takes produce and he goes and stores it on the roof of his house, or the roof of somebody's house, the roof of the barn, who knows where. He stores it on the roof. Why does he store it on the roof? He stores it on the roof because there are bugs around on the ground. And he doesn't want the bugs to get into the produce, so he puts the produce on the roof. I guess there were no bugs on the roof, right? No bugs that could fly around so easily and get to the roof. Okay. And now what happens? The next morning, the dew has fallen and the produce is wet. So remember, what are the conditions that we need in order for liquid to transmit tuma? We need one condition. We need two conditions.
We needed some pooling. He has to flip it.
No, we need, it has to be one of the recognized, that's the second one. It has to be one of the recognized liquids, right?
Right. Then there's
Secondly,
7 or something.
right, 7 liquids. Secondly, it has to be wet in a manner that he's happy about. If it's wet in a manner that he's not happy about, he doesn't want it to be wet, so then it is, the expression of the Gemara was, lo bechiyutan. It's no longer, it's not considered an expression of kiyutan, a fulfillment of kiyutan.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Of course, that's what we're here for.
Okay. Wouldn't one assume that someone doesn't want their wheat or whatever fruits or vegetables to become tameh, and therefore they would never have wanted it to get wet? Even if they flip it over, whatever?
Why?
Why would you want your stuff to become tameh?
You don't necessarily want it to become tummy, but you might want it to be wet. Walk into Everfresh, right? Walk into Everfresh and go to buy produce. What happens every...
Well, if we're dealing with Tuma,
They have
if we're
sprinklers.
dealing with Tuma now, Everfresh would never want their stuff to become tameh because then no one would be able to eat it. Because now when the cockroaches run around, we weren't worried about it. So, but now, but late in the future, but back then, why would they want? Just like they wouldn't practice shchita for real. Either they'd want to make it hullin, like we went to be earlier.
Also, but people would
Never
want
mind.
produce to be wet to maintain a certain freshness. Yes, it's
Even
true.
if it makes it turn into.
Well, it doesn't make it tameh unless somebody comes along who's tameh and touches it.
Or if the bugs crawl through and.
Bugs don't necessarily make a tameh if they're alive. They only make a tameh if they're dead.
Okay.
So it is quite possible that somebody might want their produce to be wet to maintain a certain freshness. So that's why, okay? So what was the case of the produce on the roof? What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said that even if the katan was happy that the produce became wet, it's not considered kiyutan. Rabbi Yochanan came along, and what did Rabbi Yochanan say about that Mishnah? That's only if he didn't subsequently flip it over to the other side. But if he did flip it over to the other side, what does that indicate? Why would he have flipped it over to the other side?
Because he really wants
Because he wants the other side to get wet too, meaning that he really wanted it to get wet. So if he flips it over to the other side, even without a stated intent, there's an unstated machshava here, but there's a corroborating ma'aseh which makes it obvious. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan knows what the answer to that is already. So now, finally, the Gemara reinterprets Rabbi Chia's question as Rabbi Yochanan asked it, or I should say Rabbi Yochanan's question as Rabbi Chia meant to ask it. And what is it? He's asking whether an unstated machshava corroborated by a ma'aseh is significant. We know it's significant, but is it significant on a d'oraita level, a biblical level, or a d'rabbanan level? Okay, now, let's go into the Gemara and see where that is. That's pretty much all we did. We didn't even get to the answer, this bottom line answer last week, or 2 weeks ago, so that's what we're going to get up to now. We're on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, and on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara says as follows. Aval hipech bahen harei ze bechiyutan. So hacha kam bebai. This is how the Gemara concludes the entire right section here. How does it conclude it? By saying, hachi kam bebai. This is really what Rabbi Yochanan's question is. Di oraita o di rabba. There's a good note here. I don't have the note, but there's a good note that explains the distinction between the two. You see the note, Natan? You guys see the note? Where it talks about whether it's significant on a d'oraita
This
level.
question has important practical consequences. For if the inferred thought is considered meaningful only on the rabbinic level, then it can affect only stringencies. It cannot affect leniencies when biblical law is involved. To illustrate, consider the biblical law that an olah must be slaughtered for the sake of being offered as an olah. Now suppose that a miner moved an ola from the south end of the courtyard to the north end and slaughtered it. This act indicates that the miner indeed had proper intent when he slaughtered the ola. But if such an act is significant on a rabbinic level only, this means that biblical law does not recognize the miner's intent. So the owner does not fulfill his obligation to bring an ola.
Okay, clear?
Mm-hmm.
Understand that, right? Remember, the ola needs to be shechted l'shem ola. And if we say that what the katan did is only significant on a dirabanan level, this carbon has not been shechted l'shem ola.
Right, and then
The
they give the example. On the other hand, the inferred intent can affect stringencies even if the act's significance is recognized only rabbinically. Thus, if a miner brought produce to the roof and turned it over and when it got wet, it is susceptible to tuma. Although biblical law attaches no significance to the satisfaction with the wetting, rabbinic law does. So the produce is susceptible to tuma under rabbinic law.
So that's how it can be stringent. That's how it can be stringent. So that's the question really that Rabbi Yochanan is asking, is this act of the katan, this unstated machshava corroborated by a maaseh, is this act, or even stated machshava corroborated by a maaseh, right? Is this act considered significant dioraita or significant dirabanan? Okay. Now,
it's a pretty odd way to ask the question, though. If you actually go back and look at the words of the question, right? Katan yesh lo machshava o ein lo machshava.
Right.
And from that, we got all the way to this.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what the Gemara is telling us. What this whole thing is telling us is that's the only possible question that Rabbi Yochanan could be asking. In other words, he can't be asking what we thought he was asking because it doesn't work. So this is the only thing he could be asking. Why didn't he ask it in a clearer fashion? Because to him it was clear. He knew all of this. To Rabbi Chia bar Abba, who was saying it over, he said it the way Rabbi Yochanan said it. But then to clarify, we had to go through this whole thing with Rabbi Ami back and forth. Okay? Now the Gemara moves to the left side of the question, the left side of the spreadsheet, or the flow chart. What does the left side say? So let's continue on in the Gemara.
But wait, we don't get an answer to that question?
No, we're not going to get an answer.
Oh, well, that's very unsatisfying.
Right, we're not going to get
After all that work, we're not
getting an answer, right? We don't care about the answer right now. Actually, we just want to know. We've spent all this time trying to understand the question.
Okay.
Okay, we're not getting an answer. Although look at hold on a second. Okay, I mean Rashi just reinforces what we just said. That's the way that Rabbi Chia bar Abba asked the question. However, there's another opinion, and this other opinion is this other opinion is Masni Hachi. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Masni Hachi. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is going to relearn the Gemara, but he's going to change the question that Rabbi Yochanan is asking. So if you look back in your flow chart, on the top, on the right, is the way we first learned it. Rabbi Yochanan's question is Katan yesh lo machshava o ein lo machshava. According to the way Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak learns it, it's Amar Rabbi Chia bar Amma by Rabbi Yochanan Katan yesh lo maaseh o ein lo maaseh. In other words, what does Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak do? He completely changes the question of Rabbi Yochanan, and he says, what Rabbi Yochanan is really asking is Katan yesh lo maaseh o ein lo maaseh. So the Gemara is going to go through not the whole thing. It's going to wind up in the same place, but it's only going to go through part of it because the rest of it is to be understood. So let's see. So Amar le Rabbi Ami says, just like Rabbi Ami said before, V'tibai le machshava. Why are you not asking about machshava? Right? The last time he said, why are you not asking about maaseh? Because Rabbi Yochanan's question was couched in terms of machshava. Here, since Rabbi Yochanan's question is couched in terms of maaseh, Rabbi Ami says, why are you not asking about machshava? Maishna machshava delo kamibae. Why? What is special about machshava that you're not asking about it? Disnan, because we learn ein lahen machshava. We learn that they don't have machshava. How do we learn that they don't have machshava? How do we learn? What's the case? The Gemara doesn't bring it again, but what's the case where we learn ein lahen machshava?
It's from before with the drilling.
With the nuts.
Yeah.
Right, with the nuts. The case with the nuts. The case with the nuts demonstrate. In other words, the katan looks at this walnut and he says, I'm going to use this walnut to play sand timer. But he doesn't do anything. So does that walnut become a kli? We know already the answer. The answer is no, it does not become a kli. So from that case, from that Mishnah, we learn that machshava alone is not good. But what else do we learn from that Mishnah? That machshava with maaseh is good, right? So why Maishna machshava de lo kimi baile disnan ein lahen machshava maaseh nami lo ti baile? Why should he be asking about maaseh? We already learned about maaseh. Disnan yesh lahen maaseh. That same case, the case of the nuts. So the Gemara now skips all the way down to the bottom. Rather than go through everything else, the Gemara skips all the way down to the bottom and said, because you can imagine if the Gemara wanted to, it could have just gone through all of these cases in the reverse,
inverse,
right?
yeah.
Right, but it doesn't. It goes right to the bottom and it says, Ha ha kami baile. This is what he's asking. Di oraisa o di rabbanan. Right? Is this di oraisa o di rabbanan? Now, this di oraisa o di rabbanan is a little bit different, right? It's a little bit different. Here, when he says di oraisa o di rabbanan, he's talking about a machshava corroborated by a maaseh, right? That's where we're ultimately coming to, a machshava corroborated by a maaseh. And that's the case. Look at Rashi. Rashi is where you'll see where Rashi gets wide once and then Rashi gets wide a second time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from there. It says v'samchina, right? It's dioraisa v'samchinan Allah gabe shchitas ola umachshiran, right? That was the case that Natan read before from the note that we would allow that this katan shechting the ola in the northern part of the Azara would be considered a good shchitas ola, and it would fulfill the oath of this person. O dilma dirabanan hu, or perhaps it is only midrabanan. V'chumra hu the achmor rabanan l'shavye kli l'tamei aval gabe ola de kuluhu lo. In other words, it's only significant on a dirabanan level, in which case l'chumra, such as making produce, ra'ui, to become tamei, we would apply it, but we wouldn't apply it to the case of the ola, the carbon ola. So that's the left side of the flowchart. So we have the whole right side of the flowchart, and we have an abbreviated version on the left side of the flowchart. Okay. Upashit, now we're going to see what's the answer. Upashit, the Gemara wants to answer this question of an unstated machshava corroborated by a maaseh. And what does the Gemara say? Upashit yesh lahen maaseh ve'afilu midi oraisa, that there is that an act, an unstated intention corroborated by a maaseh is significant on a dioraisa level, meaning the katan who shechs the ola in the northern part of the Azara, it's a good ola. However, ein lahem machshava va'afilu midirabanan. Right? In other words, that's as far as a maaseh goes. But when it comes to a machshava, what do we say? Ein lahem machshava va'afilu midirabanan. What about machshavto nikeres mitoch ma'asav? In other words, what? So the first case was pure. This was the answer. The first case was pure ma'aseh has a dioraisa significance. Pure machshava has no significance at all, even on a dirabanan level. Machshavto nikeres mitoch ma'asav, an unstated machshava corroborated by a ma'aseh. What do we say? Midioraisa ein lo, midirabanan yesh lo.
That kind of makes sense.
All right. So we sort of come out, right, compromising at the end. Midioraisa ein lo, midirabanan yesh lo. Okay. So if I ask you the question, what's the halacha of the katan who shechs this carbon in the northern part of the Azara? Doesn't say anything, but he takes the carbon from the southern part to the northern part and shechs it. Has the person who's brought the olah fulfilled his obligation? What would you say?
Mideoraita ein lo, so that means we wouldn't count that. But
That's
if
correct.
he flips the produce,
Right,
we
we
would
would not count that on a midioraisa level. But if he flips the produce, we would consider that produce now
become
capable of becoming tummy. Okay.
Okay.
So that's sort of the answer to the question that we've asked. Okay.
And so what's the chap with chullin, all of this, ultimately? Do we get back to that?
When you say chullin, do you mean...
Well, I mean, how does this ultimately connect back to the subject of our Gemara? Because we're talking about what a katan can do.
Right, so go back to when it was first asked, right? On Yud Bet Amud Bet. Where we started talking about a katan. What was the whole reason that we started talking about a katan?
I don't remember.
Because the Mishnah said, look up about 6 lines down from the top of the page, chutz micheres shota v'katan shemel yakalkulu es shchitasa.
Okay, so we're back to that
So
Mishnah.
we start, right, our Mishnah mentioned a katan. Once our Mishnah mentions a katan, this is a tangent, relatively long and complicated tangent, on the status of the katan. Okay. And not regarding a regular shchita, but regarding a shchita of kachim. Okay. So ba'i mine Shmuel mi Rav Huna. So Shmuel asked the following from Rav Huna. Minayin lemisasek bekodshim shehu pasal. From where do we know that a person who is misasek when it comes to kodshim, that what he shechted was pasal? What does it mean to be misasek when it comes to kodshim? So you have the concept of misasek primarily regarding, or we understand misasek primarily regarding Shabbos. What's an example of misasek when it comes to Shabbos? You're walking down the street, and as you pass by someone's house, you break the beam of their motion detector, and the light goes on. Are you chayiv? Are you pater? Is it mutter?
First time.
Yeah, you didn't even know it was there, right? First time, you didn't even know it was there. So you're certainly not chayiv. Why? Because you had absolutely no kavana that could be attributed to it, okay? It's not even a psik reshe. In other words, a psik reshe, right? You open the refrigerator door and the light goes on. Your kavana of opening the refrigerator door could get translated to the light. Why? Because you knew that there was a light in there. and you knew that unless the bulb is burnt out, which is not a likely scenario, when you open that door, that light is going to go on. Therefore, the kavana that's attached to your opening of the door gets attached to the light. That's a psik reshe denichale. We spoke about the differences. But here, you didn't know that beam was there. You didn't know you were breaking that. You didn't know that light was there. You didn't know you were breaking that beam.
By you not knowing that you're breaking the beam, it wouldn't be winter either.
It's perfect. You didn't do anything wrong at all. You don't even have to bring a karban chatas. Why? Because it's called misasek. Misasek means you were involved in something which is completely permissible with no possible thought, no reasonable thought. I shouldn't say no possible, no reasonable thought that your act of walking was going to be responsible for turning on that light.
Okay, but just as Nathan said, only for the first time.
Oh, that's correct. Only for the first time, or if you forget about it. Right? Let's say you forget about it, right? You know what happened, and you came home and you said, darn, I can't believe I did that. And then you decide to go out for to a tish, and you forget, and you walk right past it again, boom, and it goes off, right? So again, you're misasek. But if you know that you're going to walk that down there, that light's going to go off, that's not misasek anymore, right? That's not misasek. Okay, we have the issue walking home from shul by the garbage dump, right? That's not misasek. So, you can be misasek in kodshim. What is misasek in kodshim? You're shechting this animal, but you're not thinking of. What are you thinking about? You're thinking about shchita, right? You're shechting the animal. You're not thinking about that you're shechting this animal l'shem karban. All you're doing is thinking that you're shechting the animal. Okay, you're completely misasek, right? You have no kavana that's attributable to the nature of
They
kachim.
didn't have to say l'shem mitzvah, whatever they were doing.
Yeah, that's kind of my question. You didn't say anything beforehand, otherwise you would say you had some sort of...
I don't know if there was an obligation to say l'shem kedushas kodshim, okay? Like when we paint tefillin, we say l'shem kedushas tefillin. When we tie the tefillin knot, we say l'shem kedushas tefillin. But let's say that you didn't say l'shem kedushas tefillin, but you were thinking about it, right? You were thinking about it. In other words, you're saying, I'm tying this knot l'shem kedushas tefillin. You didn't say it. Let's say you didn't know you were supposed to say it, but you had in mind that you're doing this l'shem kedushas tefillin. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, but here, let's say you're just playing with the straps of the tefillin, and lo and behold, what happens?
Okay.
Lo and behold, there's a tefillin knot.
Perfect tefillin knot.
Right. Lo and behold, there's a tefillin knot. Perfect tefillin knot, which is crazy, but okay. Lo and behold, there's a perfect tefillin knot. Did you ever wonder sometimes your tefillin strap gets tied up in this knot, or your shoelace gets tied? How did that happen? I didn't tie a knot. Somehow it just happened. So it just happened. You're playing with it. You were misasek, and tefillin knot was there. Okay, here you were misasek in shechting the animal. Now, you had to have kavana that you were shechting. You knew you were shechting, right? You knew you were shechting. We're going to talk about whether you have to have kavana in shchita or not. You know the halacha?
Probably.
You have to have
you don't have to have
kavana.
kavana. You have to have koach gavana.
Right?
Right, we talked about this a little bit.
Right, so here you have some kind of kavana for the maaseh shchita, but not l'shem kodshim. So what's the halacha? Minayin lemisasek bekodshim. The halacha is it's puzzle, but where does that come from? In other words, kodshim require dafka a kavana to be shechted l'shem kodshim. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, v'shachat es ben habakar. You have the whole pasuk there. I don't have it here. You have the whole pasuk there. You want to just read the rest of the pasuk?
V'shachat et ben habakar lifnei Hashem v'hikrivu bnei Aharon hakohanim et adam v'zarku et adam al mizbeach saviv asher petach ohel moed.
Okay, so the crucial,
so clearly a kedushin
the crucial component for us is v'shachat as ben habakar, right? Lifnei Hashem, right? It has to be lifnei Hashem. v'shachatas ben habakar shetehei shchita l'shem ben bakar. Right, that when you shech this carbon, it has to be l'shem ben bakar. In other words, you're bringing it as a ben bakar. It has to be l'shem ben bakar, meaning for the purpose of this carbon. Right, l'shem ben bakar. So amar lo. So they said, amar lo biyadenu hi. La'akev minayin, Talmud lomar liritzonechem tizbachuhu, l'da'atchem zavucho. What is this last part referring to here? What's the question that they said? So amar lo, zo biadenu hi la'akev. Okay, zo biadenu hi la'akev. What is there a Rashi here? Yeah, look at Rashi. The last Rashi, zo biadenu hi, mikra ze hayisi yodeya, right? From this pasuk, mikra ze hayisi yodeya, umikan anu lemedim shemitzvah lehiskaven, va'ani sha'alti la'akev minayin. Right? In other words, what is he saying? You're bringing me a pasuk to tell me that lichatchila I'm supposed to have kavana when I shech this animal. That wasn't the question. What was the question?
If you
the
didn't,
question was, if I didn't have kavana, is that la'akev? Does that mean that this animal is not considered good kodshim? So va'ani sha'alti, I asked la'akev minayin she'im lo niskaven yehe pasol, and the answer is from the pasuk liritzonechem tizbachuhu shina alav hakasuv la'akev. In other words, you have the whole pasuk there. That's not the end of the pasuk, right?
It's another pasuk.
It's another pasuk, and that pasuk reads,
V'chi tizbachu zevach shlamim la'Hashem liritzonechem tizbachuhu.
Okay, liritzonechem tizbachuhu. L'da'atchem, it has to be with your da'as zavucho. You have to shecht it. You have to slaughter it. So from here we learn that even if regular shchita does not require kavana, meaning my knife falls off the table and shechs this animal, or I throw my knife against
ratzon.
All right,
Is that the...
right. I throw my knife against the wall, and when I throw my knife against the wall, it shechs the animal b'holacha, bounces off the wall, and shechs the animal b'holva'a, right? Completes the shechita process b'holva'a, however we imagine that to be. Okay, so I don't need kavana for shechita. What do I need? I do need koach gavra. That I need. I need koach gavra. So if the knife just falls off the table, I put the knife down here on the table. I don't do anything, right? There's an earthquake, and the knife falls off the table and happens to shech the sheep, my pet sheep, which was lying here on the ground. That's not a good shechita, right? That's not a good shechita because there was no koach gavra that was involved. But when it comes to kodshim and shechting kodshim, so not only do I need koach gavra, but I also need kavana. I need das. And if I don't have kavana, if I'm not thinking that I'm shechting this l'shem kodshim, it's no good. The animal, when I say the animal is no good, meaning the animal is shechted, but it's not valid to fulfill the neder that the person who brought it has to fulfill.
So what's this? There's two psukim here.
Right.
And I'm looking at the Torah or Shalem, and one is in Perek Aleph and one is in Perek Yud Tet. So it's not like they're close, a Vayikra.
Right.
It's not like they're close to one another. What's the first pasuk teaching me? Like I see the lirtzon tiz bachuhu, because you need ratzon, it's saying you need kavana. What's the first pasuk really teaching me?
That it has to be l'shem.
Oh, it's that it's kodshim?
Yes, that it has to be l'shem ben bakar. In other words, the first
see.
pasuk is telling you that it has to be l'shem ben bakar.
Oh, it's the l'shem that's...
Right? It is telling you that you have to have kavana. You have to have kavana. It's not telling you what the story is if you don't have kavana. It's saying that you have to have kavana.
Okay, I
Now,
know.
if I don't have kavana, what's the answer?
So then you need the second pasuk.
That's the second pasuk.
Okay.
Okay, good. So let's continue on with the Mishnah. Mishnah Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. The Mishnah says, Shchitas oved kochavim nevela umitama'a b'masa. Okay, what is the status of shchitas oved kochavim? Now, we talk about a shchitas oved kochavim. We are literally talking about a good shchita, right? How do we know it's a good shchita? Because you're watching him. In other words, you're watching Dario shecht this sheep. All right? And you're watching him and you see he's doing everything perfectly. Assuming, I'm not sure that we can put Dario in the case of an Oved Kochavim, but okay. All right? So what do we say? So, Shchitas Oved Kochavim, what's the status of that animal? Nevela. What's the status of a nevela? What's the status of a nevela? What happens if you pick up a carcass of an animal?
Makes you tummy.
You become tummy, right? That's called tumas masa, and the Mishnah says shchitas oved kochavim nevela umitama b'masa, and if you carry that, if you pick up that carcass, so then it is mitameyu. Okay. Obviously, the question is going to be, what's the chiddush of this Mishnah? Right? Like, what's our havamina? Is our havamina that it would be a good shchita? And if it's not a good shchita, of course it's a nevela. And if it's a nevela, of course it's mitame b'masa. So what's our Mishnah coming to teach us? What's the chiddush of our Mishnah? So Amir Hashem will pick up next week from here. Okay? Shkoyach. Thank you all.